Robbie Williams is like what Harry Styles is now. Like, oh, well, he's kind of like the Harry Styles of like, the 90s. Maybe he's had a few more hard times than Harry Styles, maybe. I don't know.
So today we're going to be talking to Adam Tucker, who is an up-and-coming musician who recently appeared on the soundtrack for Betterman, the big Robbie Williams biopic movie. He's essentially singing a lot of the songs when Robbie was younger, and his voice was merged with Robbie Williams in numerous cases. And I sat down to have a whole discussion about the entire film with him. Here you go. So first off, how are you? This whole thing must have been absolutely crazy. Like,
Yeah, it was, man. I think like it sort of really came out of nowhere, to be honest. I had a friend who I've played in a band with, and he kind of always said I sounded like Robbie Williams when I sung. And that kind of thing went on for years and years. And, people kept cutting it on when he'd be like, he does sound like Robbie Williams, doesn't he? Especially obviously when I'd sing Robbie Williams, like Angels or Let Me Entertain
exactly.
You. Exactly. So yeah, it was a bit of a world, in terms of like, I had a friend who, well, he had a friend, sorry, who he lives in London next door to, and they were in a pub having a beer one day, and this guy is kind of like his name's Ben, and he's like a vocal contractor for films, and he said, "Oh, I don't suppose this is really random. I don't suppose you know anyone who sounds like Robbie Williams because there's a biopic about Robbie Williams coming out, and they essentially want." They want a sound alike to kind of do the younger versions of him. And he's like, actually, funny enough, you say that. I've got a mate who I used to be in a band with, and he sounds like Robbie Williams. And I've always said he sounded like Robbie Williams. So give him a call. And yeah, spoke to Ben, Dynamic Vocals, and he kind of put me in touch with, well, I through him, we got in touch with the film. And sent the recordings of me singing, and then done some auditions, and then yeah, like the next thing I know, I'm like in the recording studio actually doing this thing. But for me, like, mate, I'm like a massive, like I said, and I think like recently I've kind of owned up to it, but I'm a massive Robbie Williams fan. I think, like, like it's so surreal to kind of do in a film, but also like the voice of like someone that I pretty much grew up with, because I was like 3 when Angels was released. So
Oh
like
damn, yeah.
that's all I've known, man. So yeah.
You say you're a big Robbie Williams fan. Did you know much about his story before, or did you sort of learn that through the process?
I mean, I'd known through sort of like, the hard times that he'd probably been through, and I knew that there was like times. I think at one point he kind of retired or something. I remember
Mm,
that kind of being a thing, or not gigging as much. And I obviously remember. I don't really remember the Take That kind of stuff. Like that doesn't that I only know Robbie to be on his own essentially.
yeah,
But yeah, kind of loosely knew the story about what had happened in his life. Like obviously knew that he broke up with Take That, and then obviously he met Guy Chambers, and they wrote some like of the biggest UK hits or biggest hits in the world, pretty much. After
yeah.
he'd left Take That, and yeah, I kind yeah, so kind of like loosely knew what the
The
story
basic story.
was. But I didn't know the extent. Do you know what I mean? Like that was obviously quite eye opening, and probably for a lot of people as well.
Oh, definitely. I wasn't a massive fan going into the film, hence why I'm very late to the whole thing. But now it's
Oh,
yeah, you're literally my soundtrack on the way to work. Like,
that's mad. It's crazy, isn't it? Like, it's kind of, those people who weren't necessarily, and probably like a younger generation as well, who probably didn't grow up with Robbie Williams, and,
definitely.
it's kind of missed all of that sort of hype, because I kind of liken it to like Robbie Williams is like what Harry Styles is now. Harry Styles split up from the band sort of thing, went on his own and wrote some really big hits and done like big stadium tours and stuff like that. And I kind of say to, my younger friends, I'm like, oh, well, he's kind of like the Harry Styles of like, the 90s. Maybe he's had a few more hard times than Harry Styles, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe a
I'm
couple.
not sure. I'm not sure Harry Styles biopic will be the same, but yeah, like, it's a great story as well. Like, I mean, and the whole thing with his dad as well. I didn't actually know anything about his dad,
No.
and what kind of part he played within that.
What was the hardest song for you to sing?
Oh, I mean, some of them were really hard in terms of like just like kind of capturing Robbie's voice in that, because it's so like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I think Let Me Entertain You was a really hard sing. And the reason for that is because it's a lot different to the other versions, because it's the live performance of it.
Yeah,
And that kind of brings up kind of like a lot of issues when recording, where it's obviously like, you're usually in a really controlled, we're in a really controlled environment. really nice, expensive like microphones and
Yeah.
all the gear and all like, it's all very controlled and we can kind of manage everything. Whereas like that performance is live, so it's like, how do we replicate the sound of that? So there was a lot of like we would use like an SM58, which is obviously the microphone that he uses on stage, and there would be a lot of like jumping around. So it's probably, as well as the hardest to kind of replicate in the voice, just because it's like literally screaming and shouting, and I guess like
Yeah.
you're out of breath. It was like actually physically hard because we were jumping around in the studio. I remember there
Literally
was
running
bits
around.
where we were like, right, we need to time it perfectly for the jumps that Jono does in the film, and obviously like it was, I think with the CGI you kind of have a little bit of leeway on stuff, but like still it's like obviously because the photography of the film had been done and obviously the shots have been kind of edited and whatnot. Obviously we had to kind of it was a lot of like matching the movements quite a lot, and
Yeah.
you know in a lot of songs, like the movements are kind of matched to what Jono does on stage. So Jono basically sung the whole film through
Okay.
pretty much, or a lot of it, a lot that I heard. So it was a really great guide for what I could hear and like his acting through it. So I kind of mimicked his acting, but obviously in the style of Robbie Williams's voice. And yeah, like there's bits where he's kind of like grinding on Gary Barlow and kisses him and stuff like that. So it's like moving, and then and like Land of a Thousand Dances where he's like screaming, and he does
Yeah.
like movements in that kind of that radio kind of interview performance thing. So it's like obviously that was like the guidance that I had, but that they were the hard. I mean, Let Me Entertain You was by far like the longest one we probably spent on
Oh,
our
crikey.
time on, and it's like, okay, we're going to revisit Let Me Entertain You, and you're like, oh, okay, fine. But really, I mean, it was all great fun, and I mean, like, Let Me Entertain You is a great tune, but yeah, it was just the intricacies of like what the film required.
Definitely.
Yeah,
And well, congratulations on the film. It really, like I said, it's amazing. All
oh,
your work is it definitely makes that improves the film a lot.
thank you, Tom.
Thanks so much for sitting down with me, and
No worries, thanks, Tom.
nice meeting you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you, mate.
I'd like to thank Adam so much for taking the time out of his busy schedule to sit down with me and have a chat about this amazing movie. And if you want to hear more about what Adam had to say, make sure you check out the very full, uncut interview on the Monmouth Movies YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe for more interviews just like this, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.